হ্যাঁ, শুরু করে দিচ্ছি। হ্যাঁ, আচ্ছা, ঠিক আছে, শুরু করে দিচ্ছি। গুড ইভিনিং এভরিবডি। আমি বাংলাতেই বলছি এখন, পরে আবার ইংরেজিতে বলা যাবে। সেটা হচ্ছে যে আপনারা জানেন যে আমাদের যে সংগঠন অ্যাসোসিয়েশন অফ হেলথ সার্ভিস ডক্টরস, আমরা পশ্চিমবঙ্গের সরকারি চিকিৎসকদের সংগঠন। আমাদের মোটোর মধ্যে
শুরু করবে।
আমি শুরু করে দিচ্ছি। শোনা যাচ্ছে? হ্যালো, শোনা যাচ্ছে? হ্যালো,
আমি শুনতে পাচ্ছি।
আচ্ছা, ঠিক আছে। আচ্ছা, ঠিক আছে, আমি শুরু করছি তাহলে। আমাদের সংগঠন হচ্ছে সরকারি চিকিৎসকদের সংগঠন পশ্চিমবঙ্গের, এবং আমরা 1984 সাল থেকে আমাদের যাত্রা শুরু। আমাদের সংগঠনের 3টে ইম্পর্টেন্ট মোটো, যেটা সায়েন্স, সার্ভিস অ্যান্ড সোসাইটি। সুতরাং এইটাকে মাথায় রেখেই এই প্যান্ডেমিকের শুরু থেকেই আমরা বেশ কিছু কার্যকলাপ করে যাচ্ছি। আমরা সরকারকে বিভিন্ন বিষয়ে পরামর্শ দিয়েছি, অনেক ক্ষেত্রে সতর্কও করেছি, সমালোচনা শুধু না করে বিভিন্ন রকম সহযোগিতা আমাদের করেছি। আমরা চিকিৎসকদের পাশে দাঁড়িয়ে এই সময় তাদেরকে উদ্বুদ্ধ করার চেষ্টা করেছি, সাহস জুগিয়েছি, পাশে থেকেছি। যেসব চিকিৎসকরা অসুস্থ হয়ে পড়েছেন তাদের চিকিৎসার ব্যবস্থা করা, তাদের পরিবারের প্রতি নজর রাখা, এগুলো সবগুলোই আমরা করেছি। এবং তার সঙ্গে আমরা আরেকটাও শুরু করেছিলাম সাধারণ মানুষের জন্য টেলিমেডিসিনের পরিষেবা, এবং সেটাও খুব সে সময় জনপ্রিয় হয়েছিল। ইনফ্যাক্ট সেটা এখনো আমরা কন্টিনিউ করছি। এর মধ্যেই এই প্যান্ডেমিক নিয়ে আমরা বেশ কয়েকটা আলোচনা চক্র, ওয়েবিনার অর্গানাইজ করেছি। আজকে হচ্ছে আমরা এই যে প্রেজেন্ট যে ওয়েবিনারটা করছিলাম গত 9 দিন ধরে, আজকে তার 10ম দিন, শেষ দিন। এরপরে হয়তো আমরা আবার নতুন কোনো সিরিজ নিয়ে শুরু করব। তো এই আলোচনায় আমাদের অভিজ্ঞতা হয়েছে যে সাধারণ মানুষ অনেকে পার্টিসিপেট করেছেন, চিকিৎসক ছাড়াও, এবং তাদের মধ্য থেকে বিভিন্ন প্রশ্ন উঠে এসছে বিভিন্ন বিষয় নিয়ে, যেমন স্পেসিফিক তাদের রোগ অসুখ নিয়ে, তার চিকিৎসার ব্যাপার নিয়ে তারা কি করবেন। তার সঙ্গে সঙ্গে সাধারণভাবে এই প্যান্ডেমিক নিয়েও কিন্তু বেশ কিছু প্রশ্ন তাদের মধ্যে উঠে এসছে। তো সেই প্রশ্নগুলোকে নিয়েই আমরা আজকের এই আলোচনা সভাটা অনুষ্ঠিত করতে চাইছি। এখন কি কি প্রশ্নগুলো উঠে এসছে আমি একটু জাস্ট আপনাদের বলে রাখি। প্রথম কথা হচ্ছে যে, যেটা এখন সবার মধ্যেই প্রশ্ন, যে আমরা কি অতিমারীকে বিদায় জানানোর মতো অবস্থায় এসেছি? whether the pandemic is at the end or whether it will continue for some time, এটা আমরা এখনো কেউ নিশ্চিতভাবে বলতে পারছি না। বেশিরভাগ মতামতই আসছে যে এটা প্যান্ডেমিক শেষের দিকে, এটা এন্ডেমিকে হয়ে যাচ্ছে, কিন্তু মানুষের মধ্যে এখন একটু দ্বিধা রয়েছে যে এরপরে আবার একটা ওয়েভ আসবে, তারপরে আসবে, এরকম কি চলতে থাকবে। এই একটা ব্যাপার যে সত্যি আমরা এখান থেকে নিষ্কৃতি পাচ্ছি কিনা। দ্বিতীয় হচ্ছে যে এই অতিমারিটি চলে গেলেও এরপরে কি আবার অন্য রূপ নিয়ে ফিরে আসবে? কারণ এর আগে আমাদের অতীত অভিজ্ঞতা হয়েছে যে সেই 1918 স্প্যানিশ ফ্লু থেকে শুরু করে অনেকবার এরকম দেয়ার আর ডিফারেন্ট টাইপ অফ প্যান্ডেমিক্স, ডিফারেন্ট বাই ডিফারেন্ট এজেন্টস। সুতরাং এইটাই বা কি, এখান থেকে বেরোনোরই বা কি রাস্তা? এই বারে বারে কেন এই প্যান্ডেমিক আসছে? আরেকটা প্রশ্ন আসছে যে এই যে ভ্যাকসিন নিয়ে বহু বিভ্রান্তি আমরা জানি। সেই বিভ্রান্তিগুলো দূর করার জন্য আমরা যথাসাধ্য চেষ্টা করেছি। এখন তো তাও ভ্যাকসিন নেব কি নেব না এই বিভ্রান্তি অতটা নেই, কিন্তু যেটা সমস্যা হচ্ছে যে ধরুন এখনো আমাদের দেশের যারা এলিজিবল পপুলেশন তাদের একটা বড় অংশ এখনো ভ্যাকসিনেশন পায়নি। কবে নাগাদ পাবে? পৃথিবীর বহু দেশ, বিশেষ করে আফ্রিকা বা পিছিয়ে পড়া দেশগুলোতে এখনো ভ্যাকসিনেশন অনেকটা পিছিয়ে রয়েছে। সেটাই বা কবে কমপ্লিট হবে? এবং যদি এটা না হয় তাহলে কি আবার প্যান্ডেমিক আসতে পারে? এর পেছনে কর্পোরেটের ভূমিকা কতটা, এটা নিয়েও মানুষের মধ্যে সন্দেহ আসছে, বিভিন্ন বিতর্ক হচ্ছে এটা নিয়ে। এছাড়া আরেকটা খুব ইম্পর্টেন্ট জায়গা আসছে যে গণমাধ্যমের ভূমিকাই বা কি। সরকারের ভূমিকা আমরা দেখছি, কেন্দ্রীয় সরকার, রাজ্য সরকার, তার সঙ্গে গণমাধ্যম, আমাদের যে মাস মিডিয়া, তার কি রোল প্লে করা উচিত ছিল? তারা কি ঠিকঠাক রোল প্লে করতে পারছে? এই বিভিন্ন রকম প্রশ্ন আজকে আমাদের মধ্যে উঠে এসছে। এবং তার সঙ্গে এটাও উঠে আসছে যে এই যে আমরা দেখলাম এবারের প্যান্ডেমিকের ক্ষেত্রে যে বিশেষ করে যাদের কোমরবিডিটি, এই টার্মটা এখন মানুষের কাছে পপুলারও হয়ে গেছে, কোমরবিডিটি যাদের আছে তারা বেশি করে আক্রান্ত হচ্ছেন বা ইভেন মারাও যাচ্ছে। এই যে কোমরবিডিটিটা রয়েছে, তাহলে কোমরবিডিটি যদি থাকে তাহলে আগামী দিনে কি এর ভবিষ্যৎটা কি? তাহলে কোমরবিডিটি যদি আমরা না কমাতে পারি তাহলে তো আমরা এই প্যান্ডেমিক থেকে মুক্তি পাবো না। এই বিভিন্ন প্রশ্নগুলো আজকে মানুষের মধ্যে চলে এসছে। সুতরাং এই প্রশ্নগুলো নিয়ে, এবং তার সঙ্গে অবশ্যই যেটা আছে যে এই পুরো প্যান্ডেমিকের জন্য আমাদের অর্থনীতির উপর কি চাপ এসে পড়লো, কিছু জিনিস আমরা দেখছি, প্রত্যক্ষ করছি। পরিযায়ী শ্রমিকদের কথা,
ল্যাপটপটা গন্ডগোল করছে বলে আমি ট্যাব নিয়ে
No, then I'm going to just come out of this.
তো সেইটা নিয়ে আজকে আমাদের এই আলোচনা। আমাদের মধ্যে অলরেডি এসে গেছেন জয়তী ঘোষ, বিশিষ্ট অর্থনীতিবিদ, ডক্টর সঞ্জয় রায়, আপনারা জানেন, যিনি এআইপিএইচ এর প্রেসিডেন্ট এবং প্রফেসর কমিউনিটি মেডিসিন ইন অল ইন্ডিয়া ইনস্টিটিউট অফ মেডিকেল সায়েন্স, মিস্টার পারঞ্জয় গুহ ঠাকুরতা, বিশিষ্ট সাংবাদিক, লেখক, ওনার আলাদা করে পরিচয় দেওয়ার দরকার নেই, আছেন।
আচ্ছা, সরি, আমি ইন্টারাপ্ট করছি, আমাকে না যেতে হবে, হাউস গেস্ট আছে, ওনার শরীরটা খারাপ।
আচ্ছা আচ্ছা, ঠিক আছে, আমি আপনাকে প্রথমে দিয়ে দিচ্ছি। এবার আমি তাহলে
আমি থাকবো না, আমি খালি এইটুকুটা বলে যাচ্ছি যে এই ইকোনমিস্ট হওয়া আমি এইটুকু বলতে পারি যে এই প্যান্ডেমিক, it is just the starter. There are many more things happening because we are not taking the public health decisions that are required. We are not giving the economic assistance that is required. And that inevitably is going to lead to more health catastrophes and more disasters. So we desperately need to change the economic strategy that we are following. As long as we follow this, we are not going to come out of this pandemic and we will be exposed to more. I'm sorry, I have to leave you because of a domestic health emergency. Sorry about that.
Okay, madam. Thank you, madam. আচ্ছা, আমি এরপরে তাহলে অরুণ সিংকে বলবো যে পরবর্তী আলোচনাটা এগিয়ে নিয়ে যেতে। অরুণ।
Good evening, everyone. And as a moderator, it is my duty that the issues which have to be discussed are brought forward, and each one of your opinion you are brought. Now, it is true that COVID-19 came as a surprise, but it was unprecedented, but it was not unforeseen. And today we have come to a stage where we have to think about a collective response. What are the mistakes we have done? What are the missteps? And what are the missed opportunities? Now we have in our panelist, we just heard an eminent economist, Madam Jayati Ghosh. We have Dr. Anup Roy, who is a professor of pathology at Calcutta. We have Professor Partha Majumder, and I'll introduce each of the speaker when the turn comes. And of course, you have our very beloved writer, economist, movie maker, Dr. Paranjoy Guha Thakurta, and of course, the professor of community medicine, Professor Sanjay Rai. So I would, since there was some talk about the Economist, so let me do the duty as a moderator that before we go to the next topic, I would have to bring out the issues which are very important for a common man. See, just when with a few hours notice, this country had a lockdown, there were certain things which were already there. There was a huge non-formal sector which has no rights to health, which doesn't have an insurance to the tune of 94%. And if I do for a gender equity, then only 18% of the Indian women are employed. Even next door, Nepal has much higher percentage of population employed. And if we go to the non-formal sector, it is all. Why is it important? Because during COVID, the sustenance of surviving came from the basic thing that you eat every day, you earn every day. Now this was reduced, and so a lot of people who were street vendors, who were from the collecting food from the from people, household workers, they all were into a problem. Now, the amount of job loss which has happened in various age groups is phenomenal. So while we are only talking about COVID-19, each one had to pay a value. As a doctor, as an economist, as a researcher, we still had some money to eat. But what about 50% of the population of this country who are dependent on daily wage? So if they don't earn, they don't eat. So we told them, for the sake of COVID, please do not come out. For the sake of the society, if you come out, you will spread. But the value I gave and the value that person gave were not the same. For him, there was no food. For me, I still had my salary. So even if it is for a good cause, the value given by two people are not the same. So this brings in the economic inequality which is there. While we talk about health economics and etc., a very wonderful paper came which said that had you invested enough in health, if you had per million population 6,000 nurses, then your mortality rate per million population would have been 30, even in the worst case scenario of COVID. But if your nurses per million population, that means per 10 lakhs, is less than 3,000, then the deaths are 130. 30 and 130. It all depends upon how we plan. So I think the economic angle, and we just heard Dr. Jayati Ghosh, that if we don't plan for it, then it is a problem. So I move on. We'll come to this issue again, but I will move on to a very, one of the persons who has always stood like a rock against all forces. Please let us welcome Mr. Paranjoy Guha Thakurta, who had a master's in Economist, but he decided to become a journalist of repute, a writer, a documentary maker. Perhaps I can find people with such entities in much more large numbers, but the stamina to stand against everyone, the high and the mighty, which he did when he made documentaries like Coal Cuts, when he wrote Crony Capitalism and the Ambanis. As an editor of Economic and Political Weekly, we find that he never surrendered his views. So we are very happy to have him, sir. Welcome you, sir. Before I begin, I have a very simple question. We started talking about Spanish flu. I took some newspaper cuttings of 1918. And I found that the newspapers then had the headlines: churches, schools, movies, saloons closed. There was a very interesting phenomenon that some people started selling products during this pandemic time of 1918. This is the time when the First World War had just ended. It is talking about Vicks VapoRub. If you rub Vicks VapoRub, this Spanish flu will disappear. You wear a mask, and we have a special mask which is made of gauze, which is 99% the virus cannot enter. And today, if I bring the newspaper of 2020, I find a lot of similarity. Sir, how do you think that when you are asking in terms of nationalism, in terms of for the society, for the person who has to earn his bread every day to go for a long lockdown, what is his priority? Dying with COVID or dying with hunger? Walking across the railway lines and getting run over by a train. Death is death. So I would like to listen from you, sir. How do you see and how do you envisage for us, people like us and common people, both as an economist as well as a writer for it? Please. Sir, you are muted, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Arun Singh. Anek dhanyabad. I've been told that since the bulk of the audience understands Bangla, so with your permission and with the permission of the organizers, I'll speak in both English and in Bangla. But I need to ask you something. How long would you like me to speak?
Sir, let's say we have 15 minutes, sir.
Okay, all right. আপনি আমায় যে প্রশ্নটা করেছিলেন এটা ভারতবর্ষের অর্থশাস্ত্র নিয়ে, এবং সঙ্গে সঙ্গে আমি একজন সাংবাদিক, আমি ভারতবর্ষের গণমাধ্যম নিয়েও কয়েকটা কথা বলতে চাই। দেখুন, ভারতবর্ষের অর্থ ব্যবস্থা এত খারাপ অনেকদিন হয়নি। তার অনেকগুলো কারণ আছে, এবং আপনি একটু আগে যেটা বললেন, মার্চ মাসের 24 তারিখ মানুষকে 4 ঘন্টার নোটিশও দেওয়া হয়নি, 3 ঘন্টার নোটিশও দেওয়া হয়নি। আমাদের প্রধানমন্ত্রী যখন লকডাউন ঘোষণা করলেন তখন রাত 9টা। তারপরের কয়েকদিন আমরা দেখলাম কি ধরনের লক্ষ লক্ষ কোটি কোটি লোক ভারতবর্ষের শহর থেকে বেরিয়ে তারা নিজেদের গ্রামের দিকে চলে গেছে। Let me say that this has never happened in the contemporary history of India. We've always seen a migration from the rural areas to the urban areas. কিন্তু এবার আমরা প্রথমবার দেখলাম যে শহর থেকে গ্রামে লোকেরা চলে গেছে। এবং যেটা সবচেয়ে দুঃখের ব্যাপার, এটা আমরা আমাদের সবচেয়ে উচ্চ ন্যায়ালয় সুপ্রিম কোর্ট অফ ইন্ডিয়া 31 মার্চ সেই দিন ভারত সরকারের প্রতিনিধি সলিসিটর জেনারেল তুষার মেহতা, উনি তখন চিফ জাস্টিস অফ ইন্ডিয়া শরদ বোবডেকে একটা স্টেটমেন্ট দেন। সেই স্টেটমেন্টটা সই করেছে ভারতবর্ষের স্বরাষ্ট্র মন্ত্রণালয় সচিব, হোম সেক্রেটারি, and it uttered a lie. ওরা মিথ্যে, এরকম যে সরকার এই ধরনের মিথ্যে কথা বলতে পারবে আমাদের কল্পনার বাইরে ছিল। ওখানে ইংরেজিতে লেখা আছে, it is still available, it's a part of the public records, not a single migrant on the highways of the country. এত বড় মিথ্যে কথা আমরা ভাবিনি যে এরকম ভাবে বলবে। তারপরে বলল সুপ্রিম কোর্ট বলে যে আমাদের দেশের মিডিয়া, they should take the permission of the government before they put out information about the pandemic. Therefore, we are seeing this amazing attempt to blame the messenger. যারা সাংবাদিক, যারা খবর আপনাদের জোগাড় করে দিচ্ছেন, দোষটা তাদের দিচ্ছেন। নিজেদের যে ভুল, নিজেদের যে ত্রুটি। Mr. Parag Baran Pal, you are wanting me to speak in English. I was told by the organizers that I should speak in Bangla and in English. So I'll speak in both languages. Pardon me.
Sure.
It is like this. What do? You are accusing the media of spreading lies. I'll come to that in a short while. But what do you do when the government is the biggest lie, utters the biggest lie? Never in the contemporary history of India, even not in the 1940s, have we seen such large internal migration. কোটি কোটি মানুষ। আমার মনে হয় না বিশ্বের অন্য কোনো দেশেও আমরা দেখেছি এত মানুষ এত কম সময়ের ভেতর একটা দেশের ভেতরে শহর থেকে গ্রামে এত অল্প সময়ের ভেতরে ওরা চলে গেছে। কিন্তু আমাদের সরকার, আমাদের কেন্দ্র সরকার এটা মানতে রাজি হয়নি। Instead, you tell the media, please get everything checked before you, with the government, before you put it out. We are living in the post-truth world. We are living in the world where the Secretary General of the World Health Organization tells us as big a problem as the pandemic is the infodemic. This is what the Director General of the World Health Organization, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, has remarked. But the world is not facing a pandemic only, it is also facing an infodemic. And this was most evident in India. In order to understand why there was so much false information put out, I'll have to take a few steps back. যে ভারতবর্ষের গণমাধ্যম এত মিথ্যে খবর, এত ভুয়ো খবর কেন বিতরণ করা হয়েছিল, কিভাবে বিতরণ করা হয়েছিল, এটা বোঝার জন্য আমাদের একটু পেছনে গিয়ে দেখতে হবে। একটা সময় যে সংবাদপত্র ছিল, ডেইলি নিউজ পেপার্স, একটা সময় রেডিও ছিল, অল ইন্ডিয়া রেডিও। India is the only country in the world which calls itself a democracy, where news and current affairs on the radio is still a monopoly of the government. Despite the fact that we have hundreds, more than 1,000 privately owned FM radio stations and community radio stations, they cannot put out news and current affairs, except what they outsource from All India Radio. We are the only country in the world with 900 television channels. 900টা টেলিভিশন চ্যানেল আছে যেটা ভারতবর্ষের কেন্দ্রীয় সরকার ইনফরমেশন অ্যান্ড ব্রডকাস্টিং মিনিস্ট্রি আপনার তথ্য এবং প্রসারণ মন্ত্রণালয়ের কাছ থেকে অনুমতি পেয়েছে আপলিঙ্ক করার জন্য ডাউনলোড। এদের ভেতরে গোটা 400 বলে আমরা খবরের চ্যানেল। অবশ্য ওরা যা দেয় সেটা সত্যি খবর কিনা এটা নিয়ে অনেক প্রশ্ন অনেকদিন ধরেই চলছে। কিন্তু আজকে আমরা ইন্টারনেটের যুগে থাকি। আমার হাতে যে টেলিফোনটা আছে সেটা একটা সময়, আজকে সেটা আমাকে আমার দৈনিক সংবাদপত্র, আমার সাপ্তাহিক, আমার মাসিক, আমার বই, আমার রেডিও, আমার টেলিভিশনে যা যা দিচ্ছিল সব দিচ্ছে এবং আরো অনেক কিছু দিচ্ছে। এটা হলো সোশ্যাল মিডিয়ার যুগে আমরা আছি এবং ভারতবর্ষে এই সোশ্যাল মিডিয়ার প্রভাবটা এত বড়, এটা আমরা অনেকে ভাবিনি যে এত কম সময় এত বড় হবে। আপনাকে কয়েকটা তথ্য আমি দিই। ভারতবর্ষের লোক সংখ্যা 135 কোটি, 140 কোটি। There are roughly about 140 crore people who live in India. If you go by the statistics put out by the TRAI, the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, the number of subscribers had touched 1.2 billion, 1.18 billion. 118 কোটি। What is a subscriber? যাদের একটা ওই ছোট একটা চিপ আছে যা টেলিফোন যন্ত্রের ভেতরে, দূরভাষ যন্ত্রের ভেতরে আপনার ঢোকাতে পারেন, সেই চিপটাকে SIM বলে, সাবস্ক্রাইবার আইডেন্টিটি মডিউল। তার মানে ভারতবর্ষের বেশিরভাগ জায়গায়, খালি শহরে না, খালি বড় শহরে না, খালি ছোট শহরে না, গ্রামাঞ্চলে মানুষের বেশি সিম। There are more SIMs than human beings in most parts of India. আমি না, হোয়াটসঅ্যাপ বলছে যে আমাদের 50 কোটি সাবস্ক্রাইবার, হোয়াটসঅ্যাপ বলছি আমি, না হোয়াটসঅ্যাপ বলছি। তার মানে একটা সময় যে মানুষ যারা সংবাদপত্র পড়তো, রেডিওয়ে খবর শুনতো, টেলিভিশনে খবর দেখতো, তাদের একটা খুব বড় অংশ, এবং এতে অল্প বয়সী ছেলেমেয়েরা আরো বেশি আছে, তারা আজকে তাদের ওই ছোট মোবাইল ফোনে, তার দূরভাষ যন্ত্রে খবর পাচ্ছে। এখন আপনি আমি আমরা শিক্ষিত, we consider ourselves educated, we are illiterate, কিন্তু যেটা এনডিটিভির সঞ্চালক রবিশ কুমার বলে, ভারতবর্ষের একটা খুব বড় সংখ্যা মানুষ আছে যারা ভালো পড়াশোনা করার সুযোগ পায়নি, শিক্ষা পাওয়ার সুযোগ পায়নি। ওর বক্তব্য, তাদের শিক্ষা হোয়াটসঅ্যাপ বিশ্ববিদ্যালয়ে পাচ্ছে। দে আর গেটিং এডুকেটেড ইন হোয়াটসঅ্যাপ ইউনিভার্সিটি। আর সবকিছু বিনা পয়সায় বলে কোনটা সত্যি, কোনটা মিথ্যে, কোনটা অর্ধ সত্য, কোনটা ভুয়ো খবর এরা জানে। প্যান্ডেমিকের আগেও এই বিষয় নিয়ে আমি একটা বইও লিখেছি, সেটা বাংলায়, হিন্দিতে, ইংরেজিতে আছে। These social media platforms were being misused and abused by the ruling party, by the Bharatiya Janata Party on a scale never seen before. এর আগেও আমরা দেখেছি মিথ্যা খবর প্রচার হচ্ছে, প্রপাগান্ডা, কিন্তু ইন্টারনেট, the sheer speed, the sheer scale of dissemination of information, যেই গতিতে আপনি তথ্য বিতরণ করতে পাচ্ছেন, এটা এর আগে কোনোদিনও আমরা দেখিনি। আজকে মিডিয়া খুব বড় ভূমিকা, ইসলামোফোবিয়া যেটা আমরা বলি, আজকে যে ভারতবর্ষের প্রত্যেক 7 ব্যক্তির ভেতরে একজন যে মুসলমান, তাদের দ্বিতীয় শ্রেণীর নাগরিক হিসেবে আমরা দেখি কেন, এর পেছনে মিডিয়া আছে। তো আমাদের এই যে সোশ্যাল মিডিয়া কারা চালাচ্ছে? বিশ্বের অল্প কয়েকটা সংস্থা, less than a handful of giant multinational conglomerates are today controlling what you watch, what you hear, what you hear and what you read. And that way they're influencing your brain, your mind, your political preferences, your behavior. তার মানে আজকে এই অল্প কয়েকটা বহুরাষ্ট্রীয় সংস্থা, তাদের একটা এই আমাদের ডিজিটাল জগতের একটা মনোপলি আছে। খালি আপনি কি খাবার পছন্দ করেন, বা কোন গানটা পছন্দ করেন, বা কোন চলচ্চিত্র দেখতে আপনি পছন্দ করেন, বা কোন অভিনেতা বা অভিনেত্রীকে পছন্দ করেন, খালি তা না, আপনার ব্যবহার আজকে না কালকে কিভাবে ব্যবহার করবেন, এইটা আজকে এই কয়েকটা সংস্থা, তাদের একটা অসাধারণ নিয়ন্ত্রণ আপনাদের জীবনের উপর, আপনার মনের উপর, আপনার মাথার উপরে। This is unprecedented on the planet. All those who are interested in going deeper into the subject, you can read a volume written by Professor Shoshana Zuboff, which is called Surveillance Capitalism. এটা আমরা পুঁজিবাদের একটা নতুন রূপ আমরা দেখছি, যেটা আগে আমরা দেখিনি। আমরা ভারতবর্ষে ফিরে আসি এবং প্যান্ডেমিকে ফিরে আসি। তো এইখানে আমরা দেখছি যে কিভাবে আজকে এই হোয়াটসঅ্যাপ এবং সোশ্যাল মিডিয়ার মাধ্যম মানুষের ভেতরে ভুয়ো খবর ছড়িয়ে দিয়েছে, এবং কিভাবে এটা খালি একটা রাজনৈতিক কারণ না, অন্যভাবে এর দুরুপয়োগ এবং খারাপ ভাবে ব্যবহার করা হচ্ছে। এবং আমরা আজকে দেখছি যে এটা যারা আমাদের ক্ষমতায় আছে তারা সব জানে, তারা ইচ্ছে করে তাদের দিচ্ছে। এবং অনেকগুলো লেখা বেরিয়েছে কেন ফেসবুক এই যে বাজে খবর, খারাপ খবর, যেমন আজকে যে মব লিঞ্চিং হয়েছে, এই প্যান্ডেমিকের আগেও প্রত্যেকটা মব লিঞ্চিং এর পেছনে একটা হোয়াটসঅ্যাপের খবর আছে। রাজস্থানের রাজসামান্দ জেলায় একজন মুসলমান প্রবাসী মজদুরকে মেরে ফেলা হয়েছে, চালিয়ে পুড়িয়ে মেরে ফেলা হয়েছে। যে করেছে সে আজকে জেলের ভেতরে, কিন্তু যে ভিডিওটা বিতরণ করা হলো সেটা মানে এই ধরনের মানে বিভৎস একটা ভিডিও, এটা খালি এটা মানে পর্নোগ্রাফির চেয়েও হয়তো খারাপ হতে পারে, এটা একটা আমার ব্যক্তিগত মতামত, বাট দিস ওয়াজ ওয়াইডলি ডিস্ট্রিবিউটেড। আর তারপরে পুলিশ অধিকারী যখন গিয়ে জিজ্ঞেস করলো, টেল আস দ্য ফার্স্ট অরিজিনেটর অফ দ্য কন্টেন্ট, হোয়াটসঅ্যাপ বলছে উই ডোন্ট নো, দিস ইজ এন্ড টু এন্ড এনক্রিপ্টেড, আমরা জানি না কে করেছে, কবে করেছে, কিভাবে এটার বিতরণ হয়েছে। And this is today the problem. Today there are no checks, no balances on the spread of not just misinformation, যেটা আমি বলবো disinformation. Misinformation আমরা হয়তো কিছু জানি না, আমরা আমার বয়স 65 না 66 হয়তো আপনি জানেন না, তো আপনি একটা লিখে দিলেন যে আমার বয়স 65, আপনি না জেনে লিখে নিলেন 65, আসলে আমার বয়স 66। কিন্তু আপনি যদি জানেন আমার বয়স 66, তবুও যদি বলেন আমার বয়স 60, তার মানে আপনি ইচ্ছে করে মিথ্যে একটা ভুয়ো খবর একটা প্রচার করছেন। সো disinformation is propaganda when you know something is false and you deliberately do it. তো আজকে আমরা দেখেছি কিভাবে কত ধরনের ফেক রেমেডিজ, হোম রেমেডিজ, এটা নাও বিশ্বের এরকম ভিডিও তৈরি করে বলছে যে এটা করো, করোনায় আক্রান্ত হবে না, আক্রান্ত হলেও তোমার কোনো অসুবিধা হবে না। And this was coupled, this disinformation was coupled with a crippling shortage of hospital beds, of oxygen. দ্বিতীয়বার যখন করোনার ঢেউ হলো, I was one of the victims, একটা হিন্দি পত্রিকা দৈনিক ভাস্কর, 17 জন সাংবাদিক গঙ্গার আলাহাবাদ, যেটাকে আজকে নাম হয়েছে প্রয়াগরাজ, বিহারের গয়া পর্যন্ত ওপর নিচ 17টা জেলায় দিনের পর দিন ওদের সংবাদপত্রের শিরোনাম বেরোলো যে কিভাবে সরকার মিথ্যে কথা বলছে। And Dainik Bhaskar is no ordinary newspaper. It claims it is the most widely circulated daily newspaper in the world. They have a competition with Dainik Jagran. What happened after that? Income tax department goes after them. The government today seeks to spy on everybody. They are using, it has been alleged that they are using spyware. My phone is one of the phones that has been infected by so-called Pegasus, but the government is not admitting it. কিন্তু আমরা একটা জিনিস পরিষ্কার দেখতে পাচ্ছি যে ঘৃণা ভরা খবর, যে খবর লোকে পড়ে বা যে ভিডিও লোকে দেখে বা যে খবর শুনে হিন্দু মুসলমানের দাঙ্গা হচ্ছে, এই ধরনের কাদের উপরে সরকার কাদের গ্রেফতার করছে, কাদের ওপরে ফার্স্ট ইনফরমেশন দিচ্ছে, কাকে আদালতে নিয়ে যাচ্ছে এবং কাদের নিচ্ছে না, এটা পরিষ্কার। শাহিনবাগে কি হয়েছিল, উত্তর পূর্ব দিল্লিতে কি হয়েছিল হিন্দু মুসলমান দাঙ্গায়, why is this the case? আমি 2 মিনিট বলে শেষ করব। I can answer many questions. I can talk on the subject for 1 hour, but I won't. যে রেভিনিউ মডেলটা ছিল, গণমাধ্যমের যে বিজনেস মডেলটা ছিল, সেটা শেষ হয়ে গেছে, অনেকদিনই শেষ হয়ে যাচ্ছিল, এবার একদম মানে আর কিছু বাকি নেই। যারা বিজ্ঞাপন দাতাদের ওপর নির্ভর করত তাদের সংবাদপত্র টেলিভিশন চ্যানেল চালাবার জন্য, তাদের কর্মচারীদের বেতন দেওয়ার জন্য, মাইনে দেওয়ার জন্য, তারা এই যে নিজি কোম্পানি, প্রাইভেট কোম্পানির বিজ্ঞাপন প্রায় শেষ হয়ে গেছে, এটা করোনার পরে তাড়াতাড়ি হয়ে গেছে। তারা সরকারি বিজ্ঞাপনের ওপর তাদের নির্ভরতা আরো বেড়ে গেছে। সেই জন্য সরকারের গুণগান খালি করছে। আজকে যে সাংবাদিকের যে কাজ, একটা গণতন্ত্রের যে কাজ, যে প্রশ্ন করো, যে ক্ষমতায় আছে তাদের কঠিন প্রশ্ন করো, তারা করছে না। আমাদের মাননীয় প্রধানমন্ত্রী কাদের সাক্ষাৎকার দিচ্ছে? যারা ভালো ভালো প্রশ্ন করছে। কানাডার একজন নাগরিক, একজন অভিনেতা, উনিও সাক্ষাৎকার করছেন, জিজ্ঞেস করছেন মোদিবাবু আপনি আম কিভাবে খেতে পছন্দ করেন? আপনি কেটে খান না চুষে খান? এই ধরনের জিনিস আমরা আজকে দেখছি। তো আজকে যেটা আমরা গণমাধ্যম বলতাম আগে, ট্রেডিশনাল মিডিয়া, লেগাসি মিডিয়া, নিউজ পেপার্স, ম্যাগাজিনস, টেলিভিশন চ্যানেলস, এরা পুরোপুরি সরকারি হয়ে গেছে। যে জরুরি ব্যবস্থা যে 70-এর দশকে যে ছিল, অন্যভাবে ফিরে এসছে। এই 7.5 বছর আস্তে 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 আমরা দেখেছি। এবং মত প্রকাশের যে স্বাধীনতা একটা আছে আমাদের সংবিধানে, যেটা প্রত্যেক নাগরিকের যে একটা মৌলিক অধিকার, যার থেকে আমরা যারা সাংবাদিক, আমরা যারা সংবাদপত্রে, রেডিও, ইউটিউব ইত্যাদি ইত্যাদি কাজ করি, আমরা যে সংকটের একটা সময়ের ভেতরে আছি আজকে, এটা আমরা 70-এর দশকের পর প্রথম দেখছি। 70-এর দশকের জরুরি ব্যবস্থা জুলাই 1975 থেকে মার্চ 77 পর্যন্ত চলেছিল। এই নতুন ধরনের যে জরুরি ব্যবস্থা আমরা দেখছি, এটা 7.5 বছর হয়ে গেছে, এই 8 বছর হবে। আমরা দেখছি যে কিছু কিছু জায়গায় এর প্রভাব অতটা হয়নি, যেমন পশ্চিমবঙ্গে। তবুও ভারতীয় জনতা পার্টি পশ্চিমবঙ্গে লোকসভা নির্বাচনে 40% ভোট পেয়েছিল এবং বিধানসভা নির্বাচন তার 2 বছর পরে 38% ভোট পেয়েছিল। অন্য ধরনের একটা পোলারাইজেশন হয়েছে, যার জন্য পশ্চিমবঙ্গের বিধানসভার ফলাফল আপনারা সবাই জানেন। কিন্তু ভারতবর্ষের অন্য জায়গায় এবং আমাদের উত্তরপ্রদেশে নির্বাচন হবে, পাঞ্জাবে নির্বাচন হবে, অন্যান্য রাজ্যে উত্তরাখণ্ড, মণিপুর, গোয়া ইত্যাদি হবে। তো এই গণমাধ্যমের যেইভাবে এরা ব্যবহার করছে, অপব্যবহার করছে, দুর্ব্যবহার করছে, এটা চলছে। এবং যখন সাধারণ মানুষ এবং আপনারা, আমরা যারা পড়ি, আমরা যারা শুনি, আমরা জানি, আমরা যদি আমরা যদি এই বিষয় নিয়ে আমাদের গলাটা না ওঠাই, এটা এরকম ভাবে আমাদের অন্যদেরও শেখাতে হবে। তো অম্বিকেশ বাবু যেটা প্রশ্ন করেছেন, যে এটা খালি ক্রনিক ক্যাপিটালিজম না, এটা হলো ক্যাপিটালিজমের একটা নতুন প্রতীক। এটা মার্কিন যুক্তরাষ্ট্র দেখছি, তবে ওদের দেশের সরকার রিপাবলিকান ডেমোক্রেটিক দুজনেই বলছে যে এই বড় সংস্থাদের ভেঙে ফেলা দরকার। কিন্তু আমাদের দেশের যে সরকার, ওদের হাত মিলিয়ে একসঙ্গে এগিয়ে যাচ্ছে। আমি এইটুকু বলে আমি আমার বক্তব্য শেষ করছি। I just stop here. I can talk on this subject for a long time. I'll be happy to take questions, Dr. A.K. Singh. I hope you've been able to understand me, because though I sort of mixed Bengali and Hindi, I did it at the request of the organizers of this conference.
So thank you very much. আপনাকে অনেক অনেক ধন্যবাদ. I think we just heard from a person who has never bowed down to, as an individual, to any kind of force. He's speaking the truth from his heart as what we feel. My problem is, amongst this darkness, how to bring back the scientific attitude. Because ultimately, it is the honest admission of science which can lead the true light and the true answer and can learn. I would take the questions for you, sir, later on, but I would move on to the next speaker.
You are absolutely correct, Dr. A.K. Singh, you are absolutely correct. I mean, we have the Prime Minister at a public function talking about Ganesh and plastic surgery. I mean, what more can I say? Please continue.
So I think we are really, I mean, I can understand the lessons which we learned in 1918, and I'll come to it later on. But I would now move on that just now we discussed and how these matters are related. So for those who understand English only, let me tell what briefly was said in the second session after the economic part. He has explained that the science is the truth. And if that is not told to the people, your rights, your thinking power, if it is changed, it can do immense damage, not only to our generation, but to coming generations. We talk of Hindus and Muslims and racial discrimination. Of course, this is a problem with COVID-19. We cannot deny that in America, blacks died more. We cannot deny that in Italy, old age people died more because they were dependent on public health. We cannot deny that in UK, poor people died more. So there is an economic inequality which is getting mixed up with the science. So science has to take a very human approach. So I move on to Professor Dr. Partha Majumder, who will explain that nature created genes, we created religion, we created God. Sir is one of the India's finest genomic scientists. He is a statistical genomics. He talks about human genome variations. He is the National Science Chair with Government of India. He is a distinguished professor and founding director of a very eminent institute which is of national importance, National Institute of Biomedical Genomics. He was an emeritus professor in the Indian Statistical Institute, Kolkata. One of his famous lectures which I heard, Our Footprints on the Sand of Time. Sir, before you talk about the genomic diversity, about the genetic basis of human disease and the science and mysteries of the new coronavirus evolving, I have two questions to you. One is that bats are mammals. They are the natural reservoir not only to COVID virus, but to rabies, to Marburg, to Hendra, to H1N1. Bats do not die. We found that obesity was the commonest reason as a factor across this world, but bats are never obese. They are flying mammals. Why is it that bats require no vaccine? Why is it that bats do not require any medicine? We also know that in our human genome, we have viral genomes called the retrotransposons. Are they in any way telling us that in tomorrow's world, this will also become, and the variants? So is the virus mutating or are we helping the virus to mutate? So yours is the floor.
অরুণ প্রথমেই বলি যে আমাকে প্লিজ স্যার বলবে না একদম না I would rather not like to be addressed as sir. The Queen of England hasn't conferred her knighthood on me yet, so please don't call me sir. আমি পরঞ্জয়ের মতন অত ভালো বাংলা বলতে পারবো না. He is a fantastic orator. বাংলা, হিন্দি, ইংরেজি সবকিছুতেই ফ্যান্টাস্টিক্যালি বলতে পারেন. সো এবং আমি জানি যে অনেকে এখানে অবাঙালি আছেন যারা শুনছেন, সুতরাং I'll primarily talk in English. Arun, I'm not going to address the question that you asked. Why is it that bats can harbor so many different kinds of viruses yet not die? That will take me, that will sort of derail me from the major points that I wish to make, and one of which was brought out very clearly in terms of scientific thinking, rational thinking, and that's really taken a back seat now, and deliberately so. And the most recent, Paranjoy mentioned about Ganesha and cow dung and cow urine and all of this. The most recent is a calendar that's been brought out by IIT Kharagpur, and many of us have protested, many of us have written, but again, who is listening? So essentially, this particular government has decided that they will communicate science, they will propagate science in ways that they wish to understand science and propagate science. It's not really, that's a very sad state of affairs, what's going on in the country right now. I will mention about a few things. Number one, I will first refer to bats. There was a lot of discussion about whether this was man-made virus or whether it was a natural transition from the bats to the human. Most of us believe that it is a natural transition, primarily because for reasons that I will not enunciate or explain, bats harbor a large number of viruses, and we are coming in close proximity with animals. We are, for various kinds of reasons, we are encroaching on their habitat and coming more and more close to them. And as a result of that, there is movement of various kinds of pathogens for us, not pathogens for them, movements of various kinds of bacteria and other kinds of living entities. Bacteria, viruses are non-living, but well, we don't know whether they are living or non-living. But anyways, those kinds of things are coming to us, and this is primarily because of the proximity that we come to other animals, which in the past we actually hadn't come. So that's one particular reason. The other reason, and Paranjoy mentioned about migration from the urban to rural, which we had never seen, and indeed it was catastrophic. It was catastrophic for these migrant laborers. First of all, it's a sad state of society that there is so much of rural populace in the urban areas just to eke out a living. So that itself is a sad state of affairs, and of course, economists and other sociologists can give a much better view than myself. But that itself is a sad state of affairs. And then with the 3-hour pronouncement of the lockdown, they were completely lost, and it wasn't very clear how it was going to be. How they were going to return home, and we know that many people actually died. And like Paranjoy said, that the statement that highways were empty, there was nobody walking on the highways, we know for sure that was false. And in spite of all of the things that Paranjoy said, I really applaud many of the reporters who actually took pictures for us so that we could see what was going on the highways. And we know that millions of people were walking on the highways trying to return home. Many of them actually died on the way back home, which is really sad. So that speaks for the social and economic affairs of our country. I want to talk a little bit about disparities, health disparities that Arun mentioned. The point is that we talk about these comorbidities, and if we look at how many people are dying, how many people have died, first of all, that's an underestimate. The estimate put out by the government is a gross underestimate of the number of people who died. And there are now fine epidemiological publications, which show that the number of deaths is far more than what we have learned, what the government has put out. But that's beside the point. If we look at the nature of deaths, and if we sort of stratify deaths by various social groups, there is a disproportionate amount of comorbidity and therefore deaths among the underprivileged. This actually is not a statement on what COVID does. It is really a statement on prevailing health disparities. Why is it that the underprivileged have more comorbidities? The reason is because first of all, they don't get proper nutrition. They don't get proper medical treatment when it's necessary. And so much of it is because of the background social and health disparity that actually surfaced during the deaths that happened in this pandemic. So it is really a statement on health disparities in terms of what we see. Yesterday, I had organized an international workshop in the last week, and yesterday was the last day of the workshop. I want to give this example because this health disparity is not only in our country, but it's pervasive. It's pervasive throughout the world. And the example that I will give, this is not my talk, this was the concluding lecture that was being given by an American, and she mentioned they were working on COVID-19, and they were doing some genetics research on COVID-19, and they were looking at post-mortem bodies. So they went to various hospitals and collected dead bodies from people who were dying. And I will just cut a long story short. Of the samples that they had gotten, 50% were Hispanics and Latinos. This is in the city of Boston, where 8% of the population are non-whites. And 50% of the people who died of COVID were Latinos. So you can understand that the disparity in terms of deaths and prevailing comorbidity, etc., is essentially all pervasive. Even in a rich country like the United States, there is so much of disparity, and in our country we know that there is a lot of disparity. The last point that I will make, I'll come back to science again and make this point that scientists in India were able to make their own decisions. And one of the decisions that we need to make in terms of preparing for the future, this is not the last pandemic. It's going to come back to us again and again for various reasons. Again, I'm not going to give you a discourse on why we believe that it's going to come back. Not this particular virus, but there will be other kinds of viruses or other kinds of pathogens that will come back. It will start as an outbreak. It will break out into an epidemic and then into a pandemic for sure. It may not happen during my lifetime or lifetime of any of the participants here, but it is for sure going to come back, and it's going to recur more frequently. This is what we believe. For this, what is required is preparation. One needs to prepare. One needs to monitor. Today I work in the area of genomics, and people didn't know what genomes were and what genomics was, and what sequencing is and what RT-PCR is. These are all household words now, even though not everybody understands it, but still people do understand. Even the common man understands that this virus has a genome sequence, and by looking at the sequence, you can understand whether it's a new variant or whether it's an existing variant. Even the common man now has an appreciation of genomics. This is what COVID has done to us, has done to our science, which is good. We like it that everybody knows about DNA sequencing and genome sequencing, but this genome sequencing is a sure way of tracking what's going to come, making predictions for the future, and we are not preparing ourselves for genome sequencing and other kinds of. So we need to invest. We need to have scientists think about these various kinds of things. There was a time in the past, not so long ago, where we could take autonomous decisions. In institutions, we could take autonomous decisions. This is what we want to do for the next 5 years. We would write a grant proposal and it would go through the usual peer review, and we would get that money to be able to pursue what we think are important scientific questions. Today, that autonomy is all gone, completely vanished. Institutions are being told what to do. Scientists are being told what to do, and the autonomy is just completely gone. And many of us are actually, protesting, writing in newspapers, in magazines against, this lack of autonomy or erosion of autonomy. But unless this autonomy is given, what's going to happen is that, whether you talk in terms of health disparities, vaccine preparedness, preparedness for the next pandemic, all of this is just going to go down the drain. So what my appeal to all of us meaning all of us who think that these are kinds of things that we as human beings in society we must think about. My appeal to all of us is that let's all speak up. It's not enough for us to be able to understand what the situation is. We need to speak up, and the more we speak up, well, it comes with a risk, like Paranjoy said, but in spite of that, we should speak up and, inform the general public, inform the government that what's being done today in terms of curbing various kinds of activities is not the right thing for India to do at this time, especially because we are going to suffer from, this is my last point that I will make. I can tell you, and I can write it down today, that we are going to face bigger problems because long COVID is a reality. Long COVID syndrome is a reality. And if we do not reduce health disparities, the people who will suffer from long COVID, and there will again be disparate kind of suffering because of health disparities. And because of long COVID, there will be greater suffering among the underprivileged who do not have access to healthcare, and they will be the greater sufferers. And this is going to prevail for the next 10 years, even if the pandemic becomes an endemic today. I will stop here. Thank you very much. And again, I'll come back if there are discussions on the points that I've made. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. And the last point which you made, that the newspapers may stop talking about COVID. People may stop counting the number of people affected. But the effect of COVID-19 is going to stay, and the value to be paid will be much more by the marginalized population, be it in terms of gender, be in terms of race, be in terms of economic. I think this is a very prophetic statement, and if we are not learning from this mistake, this discussion will just happen as a discussion. But we who believe it and understand it must talk to people, must make people realize that the people who have lost their jobs, they will not get it tomorrow. The shops which have closed, আমার মনে পড়ছে একজন সাংবাদিক আমাকে বললেন যে তিনি শুনতে পারলেন একটা অল্প বয়সের মেয়ের বিয়ে হচ্ছে ডিউরিং কোভিড-19 টাইমসে। তারা পুলিশকে ইনফর্ম করলেন, পুলিশ বাবাকে অ্যারেস্ট করলেন। জিজ্ঞেস করা হলো যে তোমার মেয়ে তো পড়াশোনায় ভালো ছিল, হঠাৎ কেন বিয়ে দিতে গেলে, তাও নাবালিক মেয়ে? তিনি বললেন আমার একটা দোকান ছিল, খুব ছোট্ট দোকান, দোকানটা আর কোনোদিন চলবে না, যা টাকা নিয়েছিলাম সেটা কোনোদিন দিতে পারিনি, আমি মৃত্যুকে কামনা করছি, আমার মেয়েকে কে দেখবে? তাই পাশে বাড়িতে একটা মজদুরের ছেলে আছে, তার সঙ্গে বিয়ে দিয়ে দিই, মেয়েরা লেখাপড়া হবে না। What essentially he told that as a father I have not been able to do my duty. I had a small shop, it is sold off. So this is the gross reality, and people are predicting that there will be 1 million teenager pregnancies because of COVID-19, extra pregnancies which happen apart from what is happening today. Who is going to take care of such children? The famine which the mother has suffered during the 9 months of pregnancy, and the child who is going to be delivered, we are going to pay a value for 4 generations. I am really shocked. I don't have answers. But in this August gathering as a moderator, I can just bring out the issues and ask you if you all can address it. Now I move on to a person who is one of the best known virologists, Professor Amitabh Nandi. All his life he has devoted in lab work, talking to people in a very simple way. Sir, I have heard your lectures. You talk to people. He was a professor at one of the most eminent places where the research on tropical medicine was being done, Calcutta School of Tropical Medicine. My question to you, sir, is that when COVID came, the press and other people, including the government, decorated that this virus is like a monster. It will eat away, it will kill you, and you should not come out. Even if you die, dead bodies were not given because that would spread infection. So when people lost their parents, children lost their fathers, they didn't have even the normal ritual. With so much of things going on, as a pediatrician, as a neonatologist, I see that newborns, most of them, even if infected with COVID, are asymptomatic. People are talking about this drug, that drug. They have hardly any idea. People buy vegetables and they try to keep it in the sun so that this virus load will become low. Sir, I would like you, as a virologist, for people, even educated people, how would you like to address these problems in the larger perspective of humanity and science? Over to you, sir. Sir, you are muted, sir. You are muted, sir.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible. Please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Singh. Good evening to everyone, all the participants. I have been listening to speakers before, previous to myself, and going through the objectives and some points to be discussed, which was circulated by Dr. Gunta. You know, these are the issues which I have been giving much importance from the very beginning. As Dr. Singh told everyone that I was working in the laboratory, a little bit of addition I must make here, that from laboratory, I had been taking everything to the field. So basically, I was a field worker, come lab worker, come clinician. So that is the modus operandi of Calcutta School of Tropical Medicine, which was established by Britishers in 1821. Sorry, 1921 perhaps, yeah. I'm sorry. Now the question is, from the epidemiological point of view, whatever Dr. Singh raised the issues for my discussion, these are mostly related to the epidemiological aspect of this particular virus and the human behavior, right from the scientist, I would say a very wide spectrum of human beings, right from scientists through administrators, through politicians, down to the grassroots level general people. Now, sometime back, I mean, in my early life, I was told by someone that in army, the soldiers are not explained what they are supposed to do. They are just ordered. It's the job of the generals to analyze things, to make strategies, to monitor everything, and give an order to the front line workers. So this is what I have seen, that this is very true, that whatever translation we have to make, whatever knowledge has to be translated, transferred to people for their right execution, for any kind of disease control, or to minimize the suffering of the people, we have to select a particular type of, right type of language. And the science is to be translated into common man's language. And then the desired result becomes evident. Otherwise, what happens? I would like to tell you that I believe that, or rather, I consider that scientific juggleries, different words, the genomics, the variants, all these things, whatever have gone to the people now, as Dr. Partha has very rightly pointed out, that they have become, some of the words, they have become very, very household names or household words, like RT-PCR, like rat, like blah, 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 many things. Now, the main problem, what I feel, that the problem of COVID, what we face now, well, that was perhaps created by ourselves only. Now, in case of epidemic disease control, there is a very clear understanding, and we believe that there are different stages of activities. The first is to attempt to know the unknown disease first. And as in the public health practice, there are several W's: when, where, who, what, something like that, you know. So unless we get those the answers of all these W's, we won't be able to design our strategies, not to speak of the execution and the result. Exactly, that is what happened, that we lacked severely in finding out the answer to the W's. Instead, from the very beginning, we tried to advise people, advise the government, advise the people advise the different laboratory, advise the doctors. For a simple example to cite here, so far I haven't used in my clinical practice none of the drugs which even the state government of West Bengal have circulated to be followed as a protocol for COVID treatment, which includes the drugs which are not really essential, not only essential, nowhere near to any kind of pharmacological activity against the viral disease like COVID. So, for example, vitamin C, for example, HCQS, hydroxychloroquine, for example, doxycycline, azithromycin, ivermectin, zinc, vitamin B complex, whatnot. And even I objected to the use of plasma therapy. The basic concept of plasma therapy is to provide some antibodies against the COVID. But nobody bothered about to understand what is the antibody status in a suffering during the suffering of the people. Now, let me tell you, the people who are dying, the people who are complicated and treated under ICU care, most of the antibodies are prevalent in their blood, and yet they are unable to prevent the multiplication of the virus and the disease pathological process. So without understanding that, people would be infusing more and more antibodies without understanding that such antibody infusion may create a situation what is known as an immunological paralysis, which is produced once an animal or anyone, once the antigenic challenges are repeatedly given, a stage comes when there is no more production of the antibodies and the person or the animal fails to react to that particular antigen. So that is a point of time which is reached during that immunological paralysis. Now, no one analyzed, unfortunately, I am speaking in this language. It may sound unethical, but I am bound to tell you that many of my medical colleagues, they never tried to understand why at all they are using HCQS. What is the role of ivermectin, an antiparasitic drug, in case of a viral disease? What the role the vitamin C would be playing in preventing the pathological processes? Now, what happened in my clinical practice during my own study on documentation, my observation was that the complication and the stage of complication starts around 7 to 9 days from the initial stage of clinical presentation, clinical expression. Now that crucial 7 to 9 days of monitoring is lost once you put the patient under this anti-COVID, so-called anti-COVID protocol, which has got nothing to do. Rather, we lose the monitoring, we lose the track of the pathological processes which are going on in the patients, and thereby everything go out of our hand, out of proportion. And most of the people who have died, who became complicated, were the victims of such therapy. I should say, I reiterate rather, time and again I reiterate that the particular protocol was perhaps responsible for so many of deaths. Otherwise, we would not have seen. Had we been relying just simply on symptomatic treatment, a treatment which is targeted against the main pathological process, that is inflammation. And we know that even at that time, even 1.5 years back, we knew that the basic pathological process was hyperimmune response, more and more active inflammatory process. Absolutely. So instead of preventing inflammation, we just killed time. We just played with many of the drugs. And the government also emphasized that if you don't treat a patient with this protocol, you would be punished. And this is the state government. We have seen this. The doctors, particularly the junior doctors, were scared to try anything else than the protocol. Even that happened in case of dengue. And this is happening. Still now it is happening. People are from the health department, they will be moving in different nursing homes in the city and emphasizing that they have to follow that protocol. Now, how come health department, non-medical person can guide a doctor, a medical person, for the treatment strategy? You know, all these things created a kind of a confusion. Similar, this is only one example. The same thing happened. People who are provided with HCQS tablet, migratory laborers, when they arrived in West Bengal, different bus stands, different stations, they were provided 2 or 3 packets of HCQS, vitamin C, zinc, and sent back to home instead of monitoring them what is happening, without knowing what HCQS should be doing. Now that played a kind of a sense of complacency. The physician feels that I have treated the patient with anti-COVID drugs, and the persons who are not infected or even infected, they felt that they are getting right treatment for COVID. And in between, what happened? The COVID disease progressed on its own. And that was one of the major factors which was responsible for whatever complications in every issues, even hospital bed occupancy, right from ICU to general bed to death. The entire spectrum of medical activities or medical catastrophes, whatever we have seen, were iatrogenic. They are created. Now, no one have tried to parallelly. My point is, okay, whatever guideline we want to give. Now, people say, for example, media would be using different terminologies, scientific terminologies. They would be discussing in their platform. Now, tell me, a common man suffering from a sneezing, cough, and cold, little bit of fever at this time, how much he should be bothered to know whether he is suffering from what kind of variant? Now, this is the kind of issues, these are the kind of discussions which created a kind of a phobia or a kind of a panic. This is where I would try to reiterate again and tell repeatedly that instead of assuring people, instead of explaining to the people what really science is and what really scientific knowledge we have gathered so far, and allowing people or scientists to undertake parallel researches, I agree with the initial lockdown that was targeted to buy some time so that we ourselves can prepare ourselves for the bigger catastrophe. But what we did that without any scientific merit, without any introduction of scientific flavor into the lockdown, and without putting objectives and aims that during lockdown what we are supposed to do, what we are supposed to achieve at the end of the lockdown period, so that we can gift them to our society, to the people. And instead, we started discussing vaccines. We started discussing, okay, I believe that it was in 2020, that 15th August was the first date of introduction of the vaccine in our country. How was it possible? And people then moved around with the hope that they will be having the vaccine. There is no problem. Now, all these created a kind of a panic, apart from all those issues which my predecessors have discussed, different kinds of activities, social activities, including Dr. Singh narrated some of the example of the marriage of that girl, unnecessary, untimely marriage of that particular girl under a condition, under a situation which were created. Now, all these issues, social issues, economic issues, scientific issues, medical issues, administrative issues, all these areas have never been addressed to be bound to be stitched together with the intermediary of scientific knowledge. What I should say, and I have been telling people, that science remains the pivot of everything. Now, whatever we have to do, be it administrative activities, social activities, medical activities, therapy, prevention, whatever it is, they must carry scientific directions, scientific merits. Otherwise, the politicians have taken the center stage. They are in the driving seat, and there is no time to discuss about these politicians, and I don't feel that there is anything to discuss about these people. Whatever they are doing throughout the world, this is unacceptable. They have driven out the science, and they are trying to capture that particular position which science should have taken. And they, for their own benefit, they're exploiting the society, they're exploiting the people, they're exploiting the economy. Who says that there is economic downfall? I should say there has been a dichotomy. There's a paradoxical situation in terms of economy. A particular section is becoming rich and richer and richest now. And on the other hand, some people are becoming more and more poorer. Look about the system in education. Why education should be kept so long, a paralyzed status? Why there is the school and colleges are not being opened? Now, the stage has come to consider the COVID. From the beginning, I have been telling that. Educate the people. It is the epidemiological guideline says that first you have to understand the disease, every aspect of the disease, and then build up some strategies for its control. Take all your guidelines, all your knowledge down to the common people, make a discussion with the people, and ask them what they are supposed to do. It's a kind of a bilateral interactive activity between the government and the people, citizen. Now, every citizen has their own role to play in such a kind of a disease control program, which they have never been told that what is their role. And there comes the simplification of scientific words. They are to be made palatable, they are to be made useful, so that they are being executed correctly by the people. And instead of doing that, now people have been flooded with so many terminologies, and they are confused, and that creates a panic. Now, this is one issues. I should again bring something. Lastly, I should bring one more issues, but there are issues after issues which we can discuss hours and days. But one important issue, because someone spoke about the comorbidities. Now, my point is, you see, as I told you, does a very common man in the footpath or in the rural area will have to be bothered about whether he is suffering from what kind of strain, what is the genomic structure of the virus or disease, what he is suffering from? No, not at all. He is only bothered about his cure. He is only bothered about daily loss of wage or money. So he needs a quick remedy. He needs a proper guideline. He needs a proper guidance and assistance, which is not given. From the very beginning, the government system, because I belong to West Bengal now, I have seen West Bengal government's activity from the very, very close point. That instead of making simplified processes to help the people, say for example, simple, where to go for RT-PCR, where to go for treatment, how to differentiate between, say for example, comorbidities. Now, comorbidities are nothing new today. Now, because of the COVID, this is another household word. It's moving around. Comorbidities are there. Rather, I should say, it is the urban people, they are more sick with the comorbidities, more prevalent because of the metabolic disorders like diabetes, like hypertension, like cardiac problem, like renal problems. These are the comorbidities, like COPD because of the pollution. Now, all these comorbidities were existing as if they were not there, as if these are something new. And people are now discussing about comorbidities. But we forget that even during dengue, a malaria falciparum case, if a person is diabetic, if a person is suffering from the chronic kidney disease, he is certain to develop more complication due to falciparum or even Plasmodium vivax, possibly a innocuous parasite, and develop a complicated disease. But at that time, during late 1990s or early 2000, we never discussed, we never brought these issues to the common man's discussion platform. We never tried to educate the people, don't harbor, don't try to introduce comorbidities within yourself. We never tried to develop our society free of pollution so that we minimize the COPD number. We never tried to educate the people, please don't go to the medical shop and ask for the painkillers. There are certain painkillers which is mostly responsible for many of the kidney transplantation which is needed because of the kidney failure, which is directly can be related to the use of long continued or repeated use of analgesic and antipyretics, like particularly the drugs like, say, what is known as non-steroidal analgesics. So these are the issues which we never bothered about, that we never tried. We were somehow, we kept ourselves busy with something we do not know. I should say, from the day of our independence, we really never set our national objectives for development in every form. Education, science, health, agriculture, everything, even administration. We never set our objectives. And now we are paying the dividend out, or paying the price of such faulty things which we have been practicing for the last 77 decades. So now this is nothing new. Comorbidities were existing, they are now present. Only thing is that we have to guide the medical professionals that how the comorbidity persons are to be treated. Now this is one issue I have raised this issue in the different platforms, that comorbidities are not an excuse to find out cause of death due to COVID. I don't agree with this, that the death was due to comorbidities. No, there are reasons. We must explain, we must confess that there are other reasons. That was our duty, how to save the patient with even comorbidities. We never addressed that issues. Rather, we have taken that comorbidities as an excuse for so many number of deaths. I would like to put these issues in this way. So let me finish in telling you that epidemiologically speaking, now the COVID pandemic, or rather at our national level, whatever we are observing now, it's a natural, we are in a stage of a natural history of any kind of infectious disease. And this is quite natural. Please don't try to take credit that we have controlled the disease. We have tamed the disease, which was so virulent in 2019 or 2020s. And there is a vast difference between what we have seen in the first wave and second wave and now the present wave which is ongoing. There's a vast difference. Such a furious disease has now transformed itself into a mere flu-like syndrome. Nothing to be worried. I would request all the listeners, all the participants to take it easy. Whatever COVID diseases are now occurring, there is no doubt that the transmission is very high, very speedy, but the morbidity and complication and mortality is very, very low. And I have seen persons, let me tell you, so far during this particular outbreak, or rather wave, I haven't admitted a single COVID patient. There was no need, or even there was no need to put a pulse oximeter onto the finger of any single patient, as because there was no oxygen demand of any of these patients. So that has become, the disease has become such a simplified one now. Now the question is, the reason of such simplification, of what might have been the reasons. Now people are taking credit that this is because of the vaccine. This is another area which we can discuss later on perhaps, because I have been telling for a long period now, but I'm not happy with this vaccine. I don't agree with this vaccination program. Neither I won't agree with the credibility of this vaccine. Now tell me, people are very satisfied that because we vaccinated, so in 2022, that the intensity of the suffering of the people has gone down. Even my medical colleagues would claim that I have taken the vaccine, and after the vaccine, I have suffered 2 times or 3 times, but I haven't died. Now, my question is, as an epidemiology, as an immunology, kind of a person, my question is, why can't you consider, how can you forget the issue which you people have raised in 2020, that it is the herd immunity which we need to tame the disease? And now you are forgetting. You are crediting the vaccine. I should say more and more transmission means, more exposure means, that is a natural infection and infection immunity. And every time we get the infection, that gives us a booster. And the result of such herd immunity, it is the 2020 episode of the newer COVID variety, whatever we are seeing now, is perhaps the result of herd immunity. This is my hypothesis. Now, there are scientists who would be listening to me. From the very beginning of this pandemic, I am telling you that people, look here, I am here to give you guidelines. I can guide you. I can find out research areas. I can prioritize. I can give you certain objectives. I can design the research protocol. Please undertake research. ICMR, not to speak of other funding agencies, I'm sorry to say, in true sense, they have not really encouraged research against COVID to be independently done, undertaken by different scientists. This is very sorry state of affair. Somehow, the research input which is needed, as I told you, that first to control the epidemic, we need to information generation, then designing the strategy of the control program. Side by side, we have to create a very strong research backup, so that from everyday research activities, informations are generated, and these informations are to be utilized inbuilt into the strategic amendments, so that we can be guided by the research outcomes. That should have been the ideal protocol for pandemic control of a disease like COVID-19. But that didn't happen. Rather, everything was taken up by politicians, right from the state level to the central level. And we people, we have become beggars. A 500 rupees a month, 20 rupees a month, a bottle of rum, we are happy. Don't use the helmet. People are not bothered about any kind of rules and regulations, not even traffic rules. Nobody cares for that. No one is there to catch hold of them. So this is a kind of a state of affair. Everything is going by their own way, like a merry-go-round or something like that. So this is high time that we people, the scientists, everything, every kind of people, from every section of the society, we are to think about our future, because I should say that COVID has created a kind of a base where we need to generate knowledge, because we are to survive. We must survive, and this is my right to find out my own way to survive. My means is the human race. It is the society. The society should unite together and raise their voice that they have 100% right to decide in which way they are to survive. It's not the politician who are going to guide, who are going to throw some money to listen to them. So again, I would reiterate that all of us should raise our voice, should come to a conclusion or certain points, so that, and take up this today's forum as the beginning of something where we can go down to the society, to the people, educate them about their rights, their responsibilities, and we should train ourselves also what would be our roles and responsibilities. My feeling is that all the scientists, as myself being a scientist, all of the scientists, they have a very tremendous important role to play, that they must start working to generate data and bring science, simplify the language of the science, and translate the scientific knowledge into common man's day-to-day practice. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I don't think that in recent times I've heard such a lecture where every concern has been addressed. You have brought too many points. I'll just summarize a few. One of the issues which you raised, that the lockdown was for the preparation of the government because we didn't have enough beds. So we wanted to flatten the curve. We wanted to increase the dispersion, but what was the correct time? What was it prepared? And the first lockdown did have some meaning, but that was only to buy time. The problem is that we compounded more problems along with this, as you said very correctly. One simple thing which I was coming across, that people have questioned that if you don't do the correct timing, and when the growth is exponential, then doing a lockdown doesn't affect. It may be counterproductive. So you started from lockdown. You also said about the medicines which are being used to treat COVID without understanding the pathophysiology, without understanding that basically it is the inflammation. And just for listeners to understand that what Professor Nandi just said, it has got so much meaning. I'm referring to an article of 2005, Current Molecular Medicine. It is a 10-page article which talks about the first SARS-CoV. And the topic is understanding the virus and development of rational therapy. It is a 10-page article. So in 2005, it was known that plasma therapy will not work. Antiviral will not work because the Chinese people, they had already tried it. It is published. It is in public domain. And when I shared this article with some of my colleagues and students, and what is the last 10 lines? What Dr. Nandi is telling in 2020, what he is telling is that you have not learned lessons from the past. In 2005, the last 10 lines it writes, if and when SARS will reemerge is unpredictable. This is written by 2 Italian doctors. But if the virus lies low for a couple of seasons, It may lull us into a belief, into a false sense of security. Over time, funding for research will dry up. Industry will lose interest. But COVID will come back. SARS-CoV will come because it is still around, one, in their natural habitat, and two, it is being also handled in research labs. Both have the potential to start a new wave of SARS with epidemic proportions. At least this article showed the experience of humanity when during the winter, again from Wuhan, it had spread to 26 countries, 19 continents. The receptors were the same. ACE2, the TMPRSS2 were the same, the antibodies. There were a lot of similarity we should have learned. We didn't learn. And it is very clearly written that all these medicines have been tried. It has not been effective. So thank you, sir. I think you are very right that the understanding the science and talking to people in a simple way helps science to be disseminated. Otherwise, people will lose confidence because one day we tell one thing and the other day we tell something else. My second point is that what you have raised is very correct. It is a warning to all of us that unless until we still think, we raise our voice, we bring in the rationality, we will lose. Before I come to Dr. Sanjay Rai, I have to announce two more things. The Association of Health Service Doctors is grateful not only to the speakers who are attending, but two more speakers. One is Dr. Sumangala Damodaran. She is an eminent economist, a social scientist, a singer and a composer. She is down with COVID. Even till yesterday, she was trying to say that even with COVID, I will come and attend. But I think her temperature is high. But as Professor Nandi says, that it will improve. So from behalf of the organizers, on behalf of the Association of Health Service Doctors, we wish her a speedy recovery. And definitely in times to come, we will again invite her. We have another also person who is known as the father of epidemiology. He was the principal of Christian Medical College, Vellore, and is Dr. Jayaprakash Muliyil. I have attended his classes. The classes, you can't leave your seat even if it is for hours together. He is also down with COVID, and he had also promised. So we all pray that he has a speedy recovery, and we are grateful to him that he also, till yesterday, he was thinking that he will join. So all those peoples, but we are very grateful to you, Professor Nambi. Now I am coming to the last speaker, Professor Sanjay Rai. He is currently a professor at Center of Community Medicine at the prestigious All India Institute of Medical Science, New Delhi. He is an editor of the prestigious WHO Southeast Asia Journal of Public Health. He is the National President of Indian Public Health Association and Vice President of the National Medical Organization. Dealing with viral epidemiology in public health is nothing new to him. He was involved with HIV, he was involved with influenza, he is also involved with COVID-19. Sir, before I come to you, my last few questions are that we now know that what has come out from all the panelists, that viral outbreaks are becoming a natural part of our life, as said by Professor Partha Majumder. There is an uncertainty about which virus and how severe that will be, but it is an inevitable march over time. We tend to get surprised by each new outbreak, but as Professor Amitav Nandi said that after independence, we never talked of the population, of their comorbidities. We don't even acknowledge that 1/4 of the population of females above the age of 15 are diabetic and hypertensive. There is a divide in urban-rural, but precisely 1/4. If we are not taking care, any kind of disease which will come will enhance it. Sir, my question to you is, people are talking in the public health domain two things. There was a beautiful experiment which didn't come by desire, but came because of a cruise ship in which about 3,700 people or so were there, and they were not allowed to come in. For 1 month, they were marooned in the sea water. It was a cruise ship, there was a lot of mixing. Repeated tests had been done, and at the end of the day, majority of the people were more than 70 years. Lot of people were thinking that there will be huge amount of deaths. Surprisingly, only 13 people have died to the best of my knowledge. Sir, when we are talking about the public health, the role of vaccines, the role of natural immunity, the preparation, because ultimately people were not fearing the infection. People were fearing getting admitted to an ICU. But no newspaper counted how many people are getting admitted and how people are dying. People counted the number of infections. Now this creates a panic. So even people who didn't require hospitals rushed to the hospitals. Those who were richer had more access. The whole world had moved from assured health to insured health. We were not prepared. So from your point of view, from a public health point of view, should we consider COVID only as an infectious disease, or being brought about by people that it has got a larger picture? Instead of pandemic, it should be called a syndemic, where we have other issues, we have other diseases, and we have not addressed them. Rather, we have converted our main hospitals into COVID hospitals, neglecting them. And during this 2 period of time, we actually compounded the problem because there was a fear, if we go out, we will die. So in this broad respect, and since you are also working with the government of India, what would be your take, sir? A free thought process from your side, please.
Thank you, Professor Arun. First of all, I would like to thank Association of Health Services, Dr. West Bengal, for having me here. Replying to your question, Professor Nandi has already replied that what is the current state, but I will try my level best to answer these questions. Professor Nandi said that science remains the pivot of the everything, and this is the fact. Sooner or later, everyone will accept the science. What is happening since the beginning of this pandemic? We are speculating everything. Okay, during the initial phase, when we had limited knowledge about this virus, SARS-CoV-2 or COVID-19, at that time speculations was okay. In last 2 years, now this virus is more than 2 years old. We have generated a lot of evidence, and if you see, almost on average per day, more than 100 publications are coming related to COVID and COVID vaccination. So we have generated a lot of evidence for COVID. It's time now. It's time to use your all these evidences. So what are the evidences? Like you asked this question, where we are going, and we are in the endemic phase or still pandemic phase? What will happen? So we should rely on the science, and everything will govern by the overall the protection level of the community. So we have 33 vaccines as of now currently for one disease that already approved by the various regulatory authority. 33 vaccines, and then 334 vaccines are in the various phases of the development. So we'll also discuss what is the role of these vaccines in controlling the pandemic, either infection or severity or death. Then we have evidence for the natural infection. What is the role of natural infection in preventing infection or preventing severity and death and subsequent reinfection? So first I will talk about the vaccines. During clinical trial, we found that vaccine is reducing severity and death. None of the clinical trial, there are 33 vaccines approved. None of the clinical trial designed to address the infection. So we are not aware about how they are preventing infections. Although there are speculations that they will prevent the infections, despite a lot of breakthrough infections are happening. We have clear-cut definition of breakthrough infections, that 2 weeks after the 2 dose of vaccine, if infection is happening, then it's a breakthrough infection. If it's a 2-dose vaccine, or 2 weeks after the first dose, if it's a 1-dose vaccine, like Johnson & Johnson, only one vaccine is 1-dose vaccine. Otherwise, majority of these vaccines are 2-dose vaccine. All these 33 vaccines are 2-dose vaccines. So breakthrough infections are happening all over the world. Just see the data of few European countries, because they are releasing the data. We are not releasing the data on the regular interval. They are releasing the data on the regular interval. So breakthrough infections per day, when there were 1 lakh cases in UK, per day 70,000 infections were happening in the fully vaccinated people. 70,000 breakthrough infections. So we have clear-cut information that all these vaccines are not preventing infection. Right. But the initial phase for original virus, definitely there were reduction in the severity and deaths. We found in our clinical trial. I was also part of the clinical trial. So we found during the initial phase or original Wuhan virus, definitely these vaccines were responsible for reducing severity and death, even up to 90%. So these were the evidence. So now we have evidence they are not infecting, but they are not preventing infection, but reducing infection and death. Now coming to the natural infection. Natural infection, there are a lot of publications. The first publication about the natural infections appeared in January, or last week of December or January, New England Journal of Medicine. They published a very good article, almost 12,000 healthcare workers. They follow up for 7 months, 31 weeks. And that was a well-designed study, very good study, and published in a very high-impact journal, and that New England Journal of Medicine. Approximately 1,200 were positive at the baseline. They had antibodies level. So they considered antibodies, any level of antibodies level, not the neutralizing antibodies. So they consider them as a infected at baseline. Every 12 weeks, for all 12,000, they did RT-PCR test. Even after 7 months, they found only 2 positive, RT-PCR positive in this group. Those who had natural infection at the baseline, 2 positivity. None developed any severity. They were asymptomatic. Whereas in another group, there were, I don't recall exactly, but 200 something infection with some severity and deaths. If you calculate this, the way we calculate, estimate our vaccine efficacy, if you calculate this even after 7 months, the natural infection is efficacy against the prevention of infection, it's around 94%. And prevention against death and severity is almost 100%. There are a lot of studies now. One study published from a very large sample size, a million sample size from Israel. They found that it's almost 1,300% providing better immunity than any vaccine, Pfizer vaccine. They compared with the Pfizer vaccine. And if you adjust the age adjusted, then 2,700%. It's not 30%, 40%. But somehow all the policy makers, everybody ignored this fact that natural infection is providing. And then all the recommendation, even from the international agencies, although WHO initially said there is no guarantee of this immunity passport for those who naturally recovered, those who recovered from the COVID. But in May, on 10th of May, I recall correctly, 10th of May, they released the advisory that natural infection is also providing equal immunity just like vaccine. But the recommendation was never about this, that they do not require vaccination, right? That the recommendation was everybody must get vaccination. I don't know what was the basis of this type of recommendation. Since beginning, I am saying, okay, vaccine is reducing severity and death, but in a susceptible population. Those who recovered from the COVID, those who were unfortunate, they died. But those who were recovered from the COVID, they are not the susceptible population. And that's why in majority of the publications, even the peer-reviewed publications, vaccine effectiveness is more than the vaccine efficacy. We know, we were taught, we are to our students, we are teaching that, see, vaccine efficacy, we estimate vaccine efficacy in a very controlled situation. The vaccine effectiveness is always lesser than the vaccine efficacy because it's in a very controlled situation. We manage the exact temperature vaccine, we are storing vaccine, or all the healthy population, we are recruiting healthy population. When actual rollout occurs, then it's not the any population, either those who are immunocompromised. So this will be always lower than this. Same like we give example of this for our teaching purpose, like just like vehicle, average vehicle, when the factory, they release the data that the mileage is 24 kilometer per liter, that is the ideal situation. So an actual road condition, that will be always lesser than that. So in same vaccine efficacies, effectiveness is always lesser. This is the fact. But see the publications. One publications, I'm talking about one publication released by our this, and that is a peer-reviewed journal, Army personnel, 15 lakh Army personnel, they released Covishield, they used Covishield for 15 lakh our Army personnel, and the main finding was that if overall effectiveness is 93.1 for the same vaccine, where the vaccine efficacy was for Covishield at 2 weeks apart. Lancet, they have already published in the Lancet with 2 standard dose 4 weeks apart, the efficacy was 62.1%. But the effectiveness, so even we are all this scientific evidence, we are playing with these scientific evidences also. So this is jugglery. Professor Amitabh mentioned this. So really, in current situation, we are unable to understand why we are not using this all the evidences. Why we are still speculating? Like no, please give vaccine to everybody, even those who recover. With this assumption, with this premise that will act as a booster. If you are better protected, we know that this person is better protected. Why they need a booster? So it's completely against the scientific evidence, whatever knowledge we have based on. So and see, so it's a irrational use. If you see, this is completely irrational use of the vaccine, and then there are many vaccines that we are using now, and we are recommending cocktail also. So no one will be accountable. We don't know the long-term effect of all this. So this is against all the scientific principle. So it's not only irrational, even unethical also. Based on the current evidence, the best protected person on this earth as of now is those who recover from the COVID. This is the fact, right? Now we are vaccinating. All these vaccines are having some minor side effects, some major side effects also. Although these major side effects are serious adverse event following immunization, these are the very rare serious adverse event, but these are there. Like for messenger RNA vaccine, cardiac inflammatory disease, we know pericarditis, and it's somewhere between 10 to 15 per million. For vector, those who are using vector platform like our Covishield and Sputnik, we know this all these like your blood clotting type, thromboembolism phenomena. This is the common, and that's why this vaccine is from the Europe, Oxford and AstraZeneca. They developed this vaccine, but they are not using for the young population, less than 45 years. All over Europe, they are not using. Initially, they started using this vaccine, but very soon they realized they are causing problem. So they recommended the second dose with this Pfizer vaccine. So that was compulsion, because they realized that if you do the risk and benefit analysis, the risk is more in the young population. In adult population, because of high mortality rate, vaccine benefit is more than the risk. But in young population, because of low mortality rate, risk is more through blood clotting, etc. So they stopped giving a vaccine to this. So it's a why it's unethical? It's not irrational. It's unethical also if you are vaccinating everyone. We know that they are the best protected person, and reinfection rates are low. Now it's the reinfection is happening after Omicron happening. Till Delta variant, reinfection rate were very low. The Public Health England, they released data of 40 lakh, 4 million people. It's available on their website also. And out of 40 lakh, only 53 had confirmed reinfection and none developed any severity. So, but we are not using all these evidences. Somehow we are ignoring all these evidences. It's still available on the website. So if it's not providing any additional benefit, then why we are giving a vaccine to those who recovered from the COVID? Those for susceptible population, it's okay. But those who recovered, there is no additional benefit. But there are some risk, although the risk is minor, severe adverse event following immunization, but that will be there. So it's against our basic principle of medicine, that is do no harm. The Hippocratic oath, the first principle is do no harm. So it's not only irrational, it's unethical also. Unethical completely. And then unscientific. Why? If you know that one group is better protected, so for comparison of all these 33 vaccine, tomorrow there will be 100 vaccine. So we don't know the long-term effect of all these vaccines. So if you have a comparator, we can monitor for a long term. So it's a completely unscientific. We are suppressing science. So why we are doing this, we are unable to understand. No doubt, see, vaccine is preventing deaths, not only in COVID, in many other diseases also. For children, we the acceptance was 30%. We have created, and now it's more than 80%. See, so we have created the atmosphere. But people will lose trust. This is my assumption, or dare we can say, that people will lose trust because of all these irrational use, unethical use of vaccination, and that will harm out the other vaccination program. So definitely the way this time infection is happening with especially Omicron, the deaths are low, mainly because it's a mild variant. If you see why I'm saying it's mainly because of mild variant, if you compare two countries, one is your South Africa with somewhere between 6 to 7 crore population, and another one is UK, 6 to 7 crore population. Both population is almost same, right? Almost similar type of population size. Vaccination status 27% fully vaccinated and around 5% partially vaccinated in South Africa. Whereas in UK, 51% have received booster almost 1 week ago. Today's data I am not aware. This is about the last week I did this analysis. So 51% they have received booster. If you see the mortality, overall mortality per million population mortality, so it's only mortality matters, right? And severity. It's not the number of infection matters. So if you see the mortality, almost 1/3. Overall mortality, per day mortality, 7 days average mortality since from last, if you Omicron first time they reported on 24th of November. So since 24th of November till date, almost 1/3 total mortality of the UK. Per million mortality, if you see the overall the population, it's almost half of the UK size total. So it's not only the vaccine is preventing, and see, majority of these vaccines are producing very specific antibodies against the spike protein and antibodies. All these mutations are happening in spike protein only. So even if your antibodies level are very high, most probably they will not recognize the new variant, and infection will happen, and also the severity and death will happen. So this is happening. So overall, this variant is mild, but the natural infection is definitely providing better and longer duration of protection than any vaccine. if you compare with any vaccine, there are publications also and observation also. See, observation like last year in 2020, in our country, this slum area, Mumbai slum area, Dharavi was the hot spot for the entire world, not only for the India. It's one of the biggest slum of Asia, around 9 lakh population. And from one geographical area, maximum number of cases were reported from Dharavi. So Dharavi are the hot discussion for all over world. What happened during the second wave? Dharavi was not a point of discussion. Majority of cases were reported from the high-rise building in Mumbai. Why? When they did sero survey in July 2020, they found 55% seropositivity in Dharavi and 16% seropositivity in Mumbai overall, other than Dharavi. So that was a clear-cut indication that natural infection is protecting. In current scenario, we can say that the way we are this infection is propagating and the way we are moving, most probably will develop the complete immunity against this virus. So in due course of time, most probably this will be just like an endemic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I think I cannot thank anything better, because I've never heard such eminent people making the same point in so many ways. Sir, you have brought out, I can only thank you from the core of my heart, because there are very few people who have the courage today to challenge this. And now I'm understanding a pattern. What Mr. Paranjoy, he started off, he spoke how the rights of people are being suppressed. I think the right of science is also being suppressed. So there is a relationship between the people who control science and who control the nation. So I think your question that why we are being forced. Sir, your studies have shown from your center that children have a seroprevalence rate of 80 to 90%. Yet, even in West Bengal, a girl child will not be allowed to appear in the college, take an exam if she doesn't take 2 vaccines. Why? Why should a human being be forced? Why can't you do my antibody test and say that if antibody is good enough? Isn't what Dr. Nandi said that a natural infection is one of the biggest vaccines? I am reminded in Europe that there used to be chickenpox party, in which if one child had chickenpox, they would invite all other children to have it, so that they don't have it in the adult, you develop antibodies. I myself have been questioned at the airport, why have you not taken vaccine? And just because I escaped, because I can show that I am a doctor at AIIMS, but it is not for other people that they can't escape. So you have brought a very important point, and all the speakers have come to a view that for science to develop, we require a climate, we require an interest in humanity, where it is not the capital, it's not the money, it is not the top industries, but it is pure and simple science with the interest of the people that should come under the way. And we have not addressed this. We doctors thought it is not our business to speak when people were dying on the railway tracks. We thought my job, I get my money to only work in my hospital. Sir, but today from this discussion, I have a request to all of you. I have a request. I have never seen such a panelist with so clear thought process. And I would also request Dr. Paranjoy, because he is a documentary maker. Sir, is it possible?
Not a doctor. No doctor, sir.
No. Sir, you are above doctors. What I am saying, we are physicians. You are a master, because from economics to this, and you have shown the courage. I was just thinking, and I would request all Association of Health Service Doctors, which talks about science, service, and society, that this lecture somehow should go to the people. And if you are kind enough, you can tell how to document it, how to make it simple, both in writing, because I don't think that there is a platform where I've met people who have talked clearly about vaccines. There's a platform where the person who understands the genomic sequence. The Indian genome sequence, Partha Majumder was a champion. And I'm seeing a beauty between literature and science. Remember, when Tagore talked about in Gitanjali 100 years back, that India is a country, it is a country with various cultures. Their languages may differ, religion may differ, but they behave in the lot of simple ways in the same ways. And the Indian Genomics Society, when they came up with the Indian genomics, they said India is a melting point of so many cultures. And the basis was language, not the religion.
Absolutely.
So I think that this is an excellent opportunity where we have these 6 speakers and the rest of the world, which is being governed by top capital, top industrialists, rich people, very powerful people who can force things even if it is not science. I'm afraid what the panelists have spoken today, that if we don't speak, people will lose faith in science. They will say, whatever you are saying is confusing. So rather believe, go back to the old age days, toss a coin and tell whether I'm going to die or not. I'm also reminded of 1918, when there is a resemblance between 1918 and 2019. Not only that both were respiratory, both people were masked. There was no vaccine. And I honestly tell what Dr. Roy has just told, please listen to this. The R0 of H1N1 influenza virus, which was known as the Spanish flu wrongly, because the first case was found in USA, it was something between 3 to 4. That means you could spread to 3 to 4 people. The COVID-19 also is spreading to 3 to 4 people. There was no vaccine. What happened? There was first wave, which was killed people. Second wave was the worst. Third wave was mild. People are doubting there was a fourth wave or not. It lasted exactly for 2 years. So at least it is documented, even without a vaccine, viruses do go away, and they did not come back for 100 years. Similarly, SARS-CoV-1 in 2003, the mortality rate was far more. It also disappeared. So I think there are a lot of things which nature has not revealed. And with such a good scientific people around who are here to motivate the people, to motivate the students, to give a new light, and who are not suppressed. Today is Netaji's birthday, and he had given a clarion call that we have to be independent, but to become independent, our thoughts must become independent. It is not necessary to change a flag. So, sir, we are very extremely grateful to all of you. I would go one by one. Sir, your final comments, sir. Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Singh. It is a very, very interesting and illuminating discussion, especially for a non-scientist such as me. I will make certain closing remarks on the points and the questions that you have raised. And with your permission, if I may take leave from this discussion thereafter. Will that be all right, sir?
That's right, sir. That's
okay. You asked me to speak for 15 minutes. I spoke for 20 minutes. I will wind up what I have to say in as short a time as I possibly can. আবার আমি একটু ইংরেজি বাংলা দুটো ভাষায় আমি দুটো ভাষা ব্যবহার করব। I think the uniqueness of India is its diversity, its heterogeneity and plurality. ভারতবর্ষের অভিনবত্ব হলো আমাদের যে বিবিধতা। We are the only country in the world with 17 languages on our currency note, 21 languages that can be used for official purposes. It's in the 8th schedule of the Constitution of India. Still, there is a deliberate attempt to misinform people and foist one language as the so-called national language when it is at best a state language or a government language. Rashtrabhasha ebong Rajbhasha. There is no country in the world with 17 languages on its currency note. Today, there is a concerted attempt that is being made by those who are in positions of power and authority to homogenize. আমাদের মতো so many cultures, so many religions, so many geographies. It's unbelievable. No country in the world has that. Let's talk specifically. 1 out of 7 Indians is Muslim. There are more Muslims in India than in all countries in the world except one, and that is Indonesia. Yet a concerted attempt has been made to make 40% of the population into second-class citizens. And as I mentioned earlier, the media has played a very, very important role in spreading Islamophobia. Similarly, this government has tried to destroy rationality and scientific temper through spreading fake, false, half-true information. Now, the point is, this is the challenge before all of us today. How do you counter this? How do you counter this? You are scientists, you are doctors, you have a certain audience. I am a communicator, I'm a journalist. And here are some suggestions I have. One way to reach out to young people, because we, as I mentioned earlier, the social media is impacting young people. Out of 135 or 140 crore people in this country, half is below the age of 26, 27. I mean, we are a very young country. We are not like China. Soon our population will overtake China. The median age of India is, I think, 27 or 28. If you look at the working age group of 16, 17 up to 60, you find well over 2/3 of India's population is there. How do you reach out to them? Various ways. Counter lies with facts. এটা সহজ কাজ না, এটা খুব কঠিন কাজ। লড়াইটা খুব লম্বা, অত সহজে আপনারা সফল হবেন না। Use the same platforms that are being used to spread disinformation and misinformation to educate, to teach. আজকে বলা হয় people have a short attention span. ওই ছোট 1 মিনিট 2 মিনিটের ভিডিও ইউটিউবে, হোয়াটসঅ্যাপে আপনি যদি সিম্পল মেসেজেস সরল ভাষায়, সহজ ভাষায়, মিথ্যে কথা কোন সত্যি কি, এটা যদি আপনারা বিতরণ করতে পারেন, you would have done a public service. And once again, let me tell you, it's not easy. It is tough. Use music, use song, use drama, use art to propagate the message. Tell the story well. Reach out to large numbers of people. এটা অসম্ভব না, সম্ভব, কিন্তু কাজটা কঠিন এবং খরচা আছে। Fake news, false news, disinformation, misinformation spreads much faster than truth. Always it has. So you are, in that sense, the scales are against you, the weighted against you. But that doesn't mean you should not try. You should keep trying. And if there are some people here who want to know in greater detail how this is possible. Secondly, আপনি যে একটু আগে যে কথাটা বলি, these messages have to go out in different languages. It can't be just in Hindi or English or even in Bangla. There are at least 10 or 12 major languages we have to look at. The 4 languages of southern India. Besides Bangla, there are at least 2 other languages in eastern India, Oriya and Ahomia. The different languages of western India, Gujarati, Marathi included. Urdu, all these languages have to be used, and the idea is, how do you have the messages? আমি কয়েকটা উদাহরণ দিচ্ছি। One of the biggest defeat that Narendra Modi has had to suffer in the last 7.5 years is when he had to abrogate the 3 agricultural laws. ওই কৃষি কানুন যখন ঘোষণা করা হলো গুরু পুরবের দিন, গুরু নানকের জন্মদিনে, যে আমি ফেরত নিচ্ছি, that was the biggest defeat for Mr. Modi. It is a bigger defeat than when he put the land acquisition law, ভূমি অধিগ্রহণের যে আইনটা যখন ঠান্ডা বাক্সায়, মানে ওই 2015-এ ঠান্ডা বাক্সে পরিস্থিতি দিতে হলো, This was a bigger defeat. Though he's very clever, he's very smart, he used two words which he has never used before. Sama, বাংলায় ক্ষমা। উনি ঘুরিয়ে ফিরিয়ে বললেন যে আমি ক্ষমা চাইছি কেন, যে আমি ঠিকমতো বোঝাতে পারিনি এই যে নতুন যে আইন আসছে এইভাবে মানে আমাদের দেশের কৃষকের কিভাবে ওদের লাভ হবে, मैं क्षमा मांग रहा हूँ क्योंकि मैं ठीक तरह से समझा नहीं पाया कि हमारे देश की जो कृषक है वो कैसे इनका फायदा उठाए। আরেকটা কথা ব্যবহার করলো ফর দ্য ফার্স্ট টাইম, একটা শব্দ তপস্যা, মানে বাংলায় তপস্যা ঠিক না, হিন্দিতে যে তপস্যা বলে মানে we have to in a sense almost like penance, almost like prashchitta, though you never use this word. Now how did they achieve this? They achieved it by a long agitation unprecedented in the world. মানে আমরা বিশ্বে এই ধরনের দেখিনি। Lakhs of people, they were in 4-5 places outside the মানে ভারতবর্ষের রাজধানী in the national capital. At its peak, there were several lakhs of people on the 26th of January, almost 1 year ago. At its lowest, it came down, they built makeshift townships. The farmers of North India, the farmers of Punjab and Haryana and Western Uttar Pradesh showed the way. They had these simple messages. Simple, একটা উদাহরণ দিচ্ছি আপনাকে। No farmers, no food. Why should farmers be so dependent on the two richest men in India? These are clear messages, clear, simple messages. Can we have simple messages, straight messages, effective messages?
We learn from you. Sir, we learn from you. Some of the panelists have to leave. I would just.
This is all I want to say, sir. Thank you so much.
No, sir, we'll come. Dr. Partha Majumder has to leave. Sir,
I will also take your leave and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. No, sir, your message for the day. Sir, you are muted.
I actually don't have any clear messages. All that I will say is that I have agreed with a lot of things that have been said, but I also disagree with many things, and I'm not going to bring my disagreements to the fore. All that I will say is that it is much easier to make pronouncements with the hindsight, but it was very, very difficult. We have seen viruses before, but we have not seen this kind of virus. I don't know about the 1918 pandemic that killed about 10 million people, but we have not, in our lifetimes, we have not seen this kind of a virus. Predominantly because of its transmissibility, predominantly because of its ability to kill people, morbidity was very, very high, mortality was very, very high. So given in the face of such, when you face such circumstances, we can talk about herd immunity. I'm a great believer in herd immunity. I have written about herd immunity, but when we know that vaccines are, at least provide some level of protection, the world has encouraged vaccines, and once they were, they came, whatever, they had lower efficacy than we would have expected. But once these were produced, we couldn't just say that we are going to depend on herd immunity and not vaccinate people. A lot of things are being said today that are on the with the benefit of the hindsight. We did not have them before. So I would say right now we have to learn lessons from what we have seen in epidemiology. But when these kinds of decisions were taken by various governments, I don't think we should be hypercritical about them, because at that time there was no, choice. But now we do have a choice, because there's lots of data available, and we need to make use of that data and come to clinical decisions in a more rational manner, which is not being done. So I think what we should do is, rather than being hypercritical about what was not done, because I believe that it could not have been done, right now is the time to speak up for rational thinking based on the data that have already been accumulated. We have just heard from Dr. Rai about Africa and United Kingdom and the mortality rates in spite of the booster, a large amount of boosters given to United Kingdom. But have we at all asked ourselves, what's the role of the host? What is the role of the host genome in the severity and in this pandemic? We have never asked that. The first papers are just coming out when we understand that there is also a role of the host genome, the human the humans who are also being infected, or 10 humans who are being infected, they don't have the same genomes, and their genomes also play a role in determining whether they will manifest severe disease or don't have to go to the hospital, etc. So there's a lot of data that are coming out now, and my only message would be to make use of that data for rational, clinical, and epidemiological decision making, which is still not being done. And that's an unfortunate thing, and that's all I will say. Thank you very much, Dr. Singh. I unfortunately have something else to do at 8:30, so I have to prepare for that, and I need to take an exit right now.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. And we value your opinion, sir. And in science, there is always a discourse which should go on. There is no place of dogma, and we definitely value it and we respect it. Now I would come to Professor Nandi, sir. Last message in few simple words for the.
Thank you very much. Almost a kind of a repetition of what Professor Majumder told. In my own words, rather, we should, perhaps it is high time to generate data, new information, and to analyze our past observations and whatever experimentation have been done. And on the basis of the analysis of the past information, observation, and data, we can design newer studies without which perhaps we won't be in a position to develop newer strategies, rather long-lasting strategy for control. And I would rather like to see these activities in a way that COVID-19 strategy, control strategy, may pave a pathway for other incoming viral epidemics or pandemic control. Because this is a kind of a lesson, and I believe again strongly that everything should be unbiased. Everything, say activities, administrative activities, scientific activities should be unbiased. And we generate information because after all of us, we are working for the people only, for our fellow citizens only, for the human race only. So whatever we have to do in an unbiased way. We have to begin newer studies, research, and uphold rather science as the most important issue in our life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Sanjay, आप अगर कुछ कहें, sir.
Thank you. See, we must use the available scientific evidence. Like I said, there is no need to vaccinate those who recover from the COVID. That does not mean that expose everybody to the COVID, right? Now we have vaccine. So it's a judicial use of vaccine, that is strategic vaccination program. There is no need of universal vaccination. Using existing science, so we can say there is no need of this type of universal vaccination. Yeah, definitely vaccine is reducing severity and death. So that should be strategic, like in high risk group or those who never had COVID, something like that. So this is a clear cut measure. So now I can say in one word, it's a time to rely exclusively on the available evidences and junk all the assumptions or speculations while making public health policy. That's all. Rely only on the scientific evidences. We have generated a lot of scientific evidences. So this is my request. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, and to all of you. But before I end, I would request Dr. Anup Roy, who from behalf of Association of Health Service Doctors, to have the last word.
হ্যাঁ, এতক্ষণে আমরা খুব সুন্দর আলোচনা শুনছিলাম এবং আমরা যে বিতর্কিত ইস্যুগুলোকে সামনে আনতে চেয়েছিলাম, অরুণ খুব ভালোভাবেই সেগুলো উপস্থাপনা করেছে এবং যে 4 জন স্পিকার এবং অল্প সময় হলেও জয়তী ঘোষ ছিলেন একটু সময়ের জন্য, তারা সেগুলো তাদের মতন করে উত্তর দিয়েছেন। এটা ঠিকই যে সমস্ত কনফিউশন তো একদিনের একটা আলোচনায় কাটবে না, কিন্তু অনেকগুলো ইম্পর্টেন্ট ইস্যুজ অ্যাড্রেসড হয়েছে এবং সেটা আমরা দর্শকদের বিভিন্ন মতামত দেখে দেখতে পাচ্ছিলাম যে তারাও খুব উৎসাহিত যে তারা এই ইস্যুগুলো এতদিন এইভাবে হয়তো শুনে আসেনি। তো সেটা আমি বলবো যে আমাদের অ্যাসোসিয়েশনের অন্তত এইটুকু সাফল্য যে আমরা এই ইস্যুটা নিয়ে আলোচনাটা করতে পেরেছি। এবং এটা নিয়ে সমস্ত বক্তাই এক জায়গায় একমত যে আমাদের আলটিমেটলি সায়েন্টিফিক এভিডেন্সের উপর বেস করতে হবে, নন সায়েন্টিফিক কিছু করা চলবে না। এবং আমাদের এই যে সত্যি যেটা ঘটনা তার জন্য ভয়েস রেজ করতে হবে। এবং যেটা সঞ্জয় রায় বলেন খুব কারেক্টলি যে ভ্যাকসিন নিশ্চয়ই কিছু প্রোটেকশন দিয়েছে, কিন্তু তা বলে ইউনিভার্সাল ভ্যাকসিনেশন সবাইকেই নিতে হবে এবং থার্ড ডোজ, এবং এইভাবে আমাদের একটা আশঙ্কা ছিল যে এভাবে কি ক্রমশ আরো বাড়বে, পরের বছর আসবে আবার ফোর্থ ডোজ নিতে হবে, কোথায় গিয়ে এন্ড হবে। সুতরাং এইখানে সায়েন্টিফিক নলেজটাকে আমাদের সামনে নিয়ে আসতে হবে। এখন আমাদের একটা আশঙ্কাও থাকে আবার যে এখন বেশি সত্যি কথা বলতে গেলে আবার অনেকে আমরা দেশদ্রোহী বলে চিহ্নিত হয়ে যাই, যে বোধহয় আমরা দেশের বিরুদ্ধে কিছু বলছি, তা নয়। কিন্তু আমাদের খুব মানে সাহসের সঙ্গে, সততার সঙ্গে একদম ফ্যাক্ট সায়েন্টিফিক এভিডেন্স গুলোকে সামনে নিয়ে আসতে হবে। এইটা মনে হয় আজকের দিনে খুব প্রয়োজন। এবং সমস্ত বক্তাই তাদের নিজের নিজের মতো করে খুব সুন্দর বলেছেন। এমনকি মিস্টার পরঞ্জয় গুহ ঠাকুরতা উনি সায়েন্সের দিকটা না বলেও কিন্তু মিডিয়াকে কিভাবে আমরা ব্যবহার করতে পারি, আমার উনি কনক্লুডিং রিমার্কে যখন বললেন, সত্যি আমার মনে হচ্ছিল যে এরকম ছোট ছোট কিছু একদম সায়েন্টিফিক ট্রুথকে যদি আমরা ডিসেমিনেট করতে পারি, এটা আমাদের করতেও হবে, কারণ এটা ঠিকই যে সত্যিকারের সত্যি কথাটা কাউকে বলতে হবে। সুতরাং এটা একটা আমাদের কাছে বড় চ্যালেঞ্জ। আমার মনে হয় যে আজকে যে আলোচনাটা হলো সবাই খুব সমৃদ্ধ হয়েছেন, মতামত আমরা দেখছিলাম। আমরা ভবিষ্যতে আবারই আলোচনাটা করব এবং অরুণ খুব সুন্দরভাবে পরিচালনা করেছে এবং ও যেভাবে বিভিন্ন ইস্যুগুলোকে কোয়েশ্চেন আকারে রেজ করেছে স্পিকারদের কাছে, স্পিকারদেরও বলতে সুবিধা হয়েছে, অনেকটা ফোকাসড ডিসকাশন হয়েছে। না হলে তো আমাদের একটা ছিল যে অনেক সময় ডিসকাশনটা খুব ছড়িয়ে যায়, সেটা হয়নি। যে যে ইস্যুগুলো আমরা অ্যাড্রেস করতে চেয়েছিলাম তার প্রায় সবগুলি অ্যাড্রেসড হয়েছে। আমরা আশা করছি যে ভবিষ্যতে আমরা এই আলোচনা আবার চালিয়ে যাব। ধন্যবাদ সবাইকে।
থ্যাংক ইউ, থ্যাংক ইউ,
থ্যাংক ইউ, থ্যাংক ইউ ডক্টর নন্দী, থ্যাংক ইউ ডক্টর রাই, থ্যাংক ইউ,
থ্যাংক ইউ,
থ্যাংক ইউ, নমস্কার,
নমস্কার,
থ্যাংক ইউ এভরিওয়ান।
না